I think we all need to be watching and praying about what happens with the United States Supreme Court.
Well, I think there are a lot of areas in which we have drifted quite a ways from the original intent of the founders.
You know, it's funny. The Founding Fathers referred to the judicial branch as the weakest branch. They didn't see it as taking this activist role of basically being a dictatorship.
In late June, the nation awaits the Supreme Court's rulings because that court holds an enormous amount of power. But is it a power that America's founders intended a slight majority of unelected judges to have?
It's because our founders understood the basic sin nature of man. Not a popular concept in a postmodern world, but nonetheless, they understood our inherent nature was to be a sinner and that we needed a savior. So they put in place a system of checks and balances and created the three branches of government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And the writing of the founders is crystal clear that of the three, the lower of the three is the judicial branch, because they did not want an oligarchy.
Founding father and third president Thomas Jefferson warned as early as 1819, the Constitution on this hypothesis is a mere thing of wax in the hands of the judiciary, which they may twist and shape into any form they please.
Well, the Supreme Court made itself very important by getting involved in issues that it really shouldn't have. It should have been leaving to the states, or really expanding the role of the Supreme Court and making itself the final word on nearly every issue.
The ultimate debate in all this is a judge's view of the Constitution. Is it something to be interpreted according to the words themselves as an originalist judge would hold? Or is the Constitution like silly putty that can be molded to say whatever an activist judge wants it to say? The ultimate question is this: will we be self-governed, or will we be ruled by unelected judges in Washington?
An originalist is nothing more than somebody who looks at the words of the Constitution and tries to find out what they originally meant. Same thing with statutes. You sometimes hear a textualist. Justice Scalia used that word for himself. That just means that you pay attention to the text. When Congress enacts a statute, they don't enact some vague idea, they enact text, they enact words. But it basically comes down to, when a federal judge looks at a statute or the Constitution, does he try to find out what it means, or does he try to make it mean what he wants? That's what it comes down to. Those are two radically different kinds of judges, and the debate over judicial appointments is the debate over which of those two kind of judges is the most important.
This debate has come to a head a number of times in recent Supreme Court history. The late Judge Robert Bork was viciously attacked for his originalist views, and his nomination was defeated in 1987. Clarence Thomas was dragged through the mud for his originalist views. More recently, Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, who believe in sticking closely to the text of the Constitution, were narrowly confirmed to the court, but only after bitter partisan showdowns. With religious freedom hanging in the balance this year, those appointments by President Trump are key.
It would be important to have Supreme Court justices who have a very humble view of their role, not this arrogant view that they can impose their opinions on the rest of the country, but rather a very humble view that respects the role of the people in our form of government.